And Brendan, thank you for being here even though we didn't need you. All right. Greater Christchurch Partnership, focus for the next 12 months. Now, Dawn, you're presenting on this one. And Catherine, I note that you're here as well. Welcome to the table. Thank you very much. All right, so Dawn, any opening remarks on this one, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a few opening remarks. I'm not going to go through the report because I know you will have read it. But critically, I think this is a point in time when there are tipping points in the life of an organisation and how we engage, not just within our relationships that sit in our place, but how we engage with our partners. And I think this is the time, in reality, where Christchurch delivers visible, collaborative and decisive leadership and taking our rightful place in working together with our neighbouring partners, and in particular with Selwyn, Waimakariri, Environment Canterbury, Ngā Tahu, CDHB, NZTA and DPMC. We're also at that tipping point because the world has changed with COVID. And we have an opportunity as a place to actually reposition ourselves. And I think this council is ready to do that. And the time is right for us to have a new vision and to reset our strategic framework for our sub-region. And that is an ambitious vision and plan for what Greater Christchurch could be. And that is about inspiring and driving towards intergenerational well-being of the people that we are serving. And to position Greater Christchurch and Christchurch within that confidently, both within a national and international context. It provides the foundation stones for us to put forward an investment platform which this city, following the earthquakes, has been trying to achieve, and it's for us to be able to step into that space along with our sub-regional partners to provide greater confidence both to the private sector but also to central government, because this comes back to serving our residents and making the best opportunity that we can for our residents. And it also ties into the wider agendas, and in particular what is happening in terms of the New Zealand Infrastructure Commission and where infrastructure is going, and even that wider issues that we've been debating over the last 2 days on water. The GCP's 5 recommended priorities really set clearly the foundation stones about how we can move forward. Firstly, to develop the Greater Christchurch 2050 work. And in a way, by saying 2050, we think, well, that's a long, long time away. That's 30 years. Yet we know that we are a place that actually has the biggest bulge of 8-year-olds in the country. Those 8-year-olds will be 38 in 30 years' time. They're our future in terms of what we're creating. So actually getting hold of that and thinking about that, for myself, I will be in my 80s, dare I say it, it's quite scary. You know, so that bit about thinking, yes, I know, thinking, actually very competent, hopefully reasonably agile 50-something-year-old, and I want to be like that in my 80s, but will my city be able to cope with me and people like me and like you in our 80s, from our 8-year-olds to our 80-year-olds? That intergenerational well-being is key. And that fits in within our climate change agenda, as well as the drive around the zero carbon economy. We've been talking since my arrival and moving into a different zone in terms of our relationship with central government. And we absolutely, I think, need to get ourselves into a position where we are pursuing the Urban Growth Partnership, which we know other parts of New Zealand have been doing successfully. It's time for us to step into that space. Underpinning that are the fundamental relationships that this council stand for in terms of strengthening our partnership with Mana Whenua and iwi. And in our 2050 work, that relationship has already been embedded and they are at the table and moving towards being part of the working group on an officer level as well. Because those aspirations and outcomes are crucial if we are to be successful. So that's the forward look. But underpinning our two other elements, we absolutely have to progress our existing our space actions and not lose focus on the things that we have already signed up to and that will enable us to deliver around the urban form, but aligning our land use and transport work and our public transport system. And as I talked about COVID, actually from a Greater Christchurch sub-regional perspective, the ability to learn from each other as we move through COVID and out the other end is really important. Engagement is going to be key, and we have discussed this as a council that isn't just about the people who sit around the Greater Christchurch table, but our members in our wider council environments, but also our communities. Whether that's our communities of interest, our age communities, our communities that come from all over the world. There's a real opportunity for us to be having a different conversation that will help us shape Christchurch and Greater Christchurch for the future. And we've already sparked interest from our youth communities, provided by Councillor Tempton, a letter that's come through from colleagues who are really excited by this opportunity and want to get engaged. Our relationships with central government and the urban growth partnerships, there is an opportunity for us here. And knowing that now we have the HUD, the Department for Housing and Urban Development being created, and they are interested in having a conversation with us because they see the potential and the opportunity we may have. And we do want to engage in that because we want access and we want to influence and we want to shape. At a governance level, there's been a subgroup formed, and that is the three mayors of Christchurch, Selwyn and Waimakariri, the chair of ECAN and Dr. Te Bareri-Tō working together, actually driving that agenda and feeding that back into GCP. In relation to the funding, and this is also about how we're working differently and collaborating, ECAN very recently took this report as the first stage to their council, and they have approved the ability for ECAN to loan to the other councils in this work over a 5-year period and made that commitment to how we can progress. What that will mean, if we are able to move forward as this council, that our contribution to the work will be $3,408 and $750, not pounds. And importantly, actually our contribution is less because of the commitment we made in first phase, which I negotiated. And it gives us a 5-year period in which to pay that back. So it's a very small amount each year for a very big prize. So, if this council proceeds on that basis and our other councils follow suit, we will then be in the position to actually move forward into developing the programme and in particularly developing the government strategy and the engagement strategy. Catherine Snook, who is our lead for Greater Christchurch on the 2050 work, will actually be working across the councils and with colleagues within our own activity here in this council, will be the linchpin in driving that work forward on our collective behalf. So I think this is a point in time for us. Our members sat on GCP are the Mayor, Councillor Davidson and Councillor Templeton, and actually that engagement has been going on through this period. So I commend this report to you, and any really difficult questions Catherine's going to answer.
Okay, so are there any questions? Jimmy and then Yanni. Jimmy.
Funding, I'm not sure, regarding to the $1.18 million. This one is the ECAN as a banker, am I right? But if we share 37.5%, if we review paragraph 5, we need to repay the 600,000. Why is more than half?
It's not.
Why this figure? Where this figure come from? 600K.
So our normal GCP work is 600,000. This is separate from that.
Oh, that's a separate.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's a different from we contribute for 37.5%.
Jimmy, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what you're asking me.
I asking that because you you have 1B, we share
It
is
will be less for us in reality. Yes, it will be less than the 37% because we'd already contributed in the first phase of the work, which is why our contribution is less at 348,750.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yanni.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You know, it is heartening to see that this has been taken really seriously as an opportunity that we need to embrace. I just wanted to check on the social and affordable housing. You've got reference to it in here as one of the actions, although it just says, this is just 5.23, developing a social and affordable action plan. I just wanted to check that that includes housing. That's for housing. And I just wanted to check, it also makes reference to the actions of the our space continuing. So can you just tell me where we've got to with the social and affordable housing actions from our space and how it relates to this as a priority?
Yep. Thanks for the question. The social and affordable housing action plan was identified through our space, as you've pointed out, and that is currently in progress, that item. So it's out for, there's a consultant producing a report for the Greater Christchurch Partnership, so the partners are all contributing to that, and that report's expected back to the Greater Christchurch Partnership Committee in October this year.
Right, so is the MOU being signed and a project plan and project lead being put in place?
So some of those detailed milestones that were set out in our space when it was committed to haven't been followed exactly in terms of the milestones, but overall that program is on track to be completed in 2020 as per what the our space indicates.
So just so I'm clear, so the draft action plan for that
Yes.
will be October this year?
That's my understanding, yes. Yep.
Right, and how do we as council have visibility of those actions?
Usually after the committee considers these matters, they'll matters like that will come back to the councils for their engagement.
I mean, I guess the reason I raise it is this has kind of been a common theme of this urban development strategy where we agree to actions, things change, don't happen and get delayed and delayed and delayed. So given how much, I guess, emphasis we've placed on social and affordable housing, I just want to kind of understand whether our language is strong enough as a city in here and whether we've got clear reporting processes to monitor and ensure that that work happens. And I appreciate with COVID-19 we're in a different space, but I do think actually most of these milestones were before COVID-19 even hit us.
Yeah. And I can't really comment on the past, Yanni, in relation to that. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. And I hear what you say, because it's how do we ensure that our wider group of members have visibility is what you're really asking, I think, as well, in terms of that relationship with GCP. And I think one of the things we have discussed as a partnership is how do we wider engage each of the council's members in the approach of work that we're doing. And that is something that I will absolutely take back on your collective behalf, back in and with our members as well.
5.23, it would be helpful to actually put some timeframes attached to the priority areas.
Can you bring 5.23 up on the screen, please?
Is it part of the report, Yanni, or is it?
It's page 98.
So this is the report rather than the recommendation.
it's work
I think
stream 3
Brendan's
really.
going to help
It's,
me out here because he will know the detail far more than I will.
Yeah, 5.23 is referring to the work that is already committed either through the regular work streams of the Greater Christchurch Committee or through particularly the Our Space documentation. So it's the Our Space was, of course, a statutory document that all councils, including this council, signed off. So that's the mechanism. I think it would be very difficult for council to now include different or alternative timeframes of its own
I was
volition.
trying to make sure the existing timeframes were met, which we've now heard have slipped. So I wasn't trying to put new things in there, but in terms of work stream 3,
Yeah, just to clarify on that, the end result in terms of the social and affordable housing plan, the timeframe overall will be met. It's the detailed milestones that were within that which have adjusted as per, So overall, the plan will be delivered as per what was outlined in Our Space.
maybe in terms of work stream 3, you're going to look at the priorities and the current work programs, and then you're going to proceed with the ones that you've identified, given the announcement that was made last week. Is that, and then do we get like a revised action plan based on that work stream 3, or just 97 and 93?
Which announcement were you referring
So
to?
if you go to point 522, actions that require significant incorporation of data, understanding will likely be deferred for a period to establish a clearer view. Following the Gazette of the MPS on urban development,
Yeah.
considerations given to how our space actions will be implemented, and then you list a number which I presume are the priority ones.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to understand is when do we see
Yeah.
what's the revised kind of actions are.
Yeah, sure. And actually, that's a really good point in terms of the NPSUD, which came out last week. Officials are still working through the implications of that on the Our Space actions. So there will be a revised sort of timeline to both take account of those implications and then ensure that the Our Space actions can be delivered in accordance with the new national policy direction appropriately. So yes, we will need to come. There will need to be a recalibration of the timelines around some of those actions. But in terms of the social and affordable housing one, that is still on track for this year.
Right. So in regards to the funding that we put aside, we will be able to see really clearly a kind of budget with milestones.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And just the youth stuff sounded really good. Can you just, sorry, I don't see the letter. Can you give us some sense, just at a high level, of what's the thinking around youth engagement?
Yeah, so where youth engagement is a fundamental part of this project, as Dawn pointed out, we are thinking about intergenerational wellbeing, so it is about thinking about our children and grandchildren. So we are wanting to ensure that we engage youth in this. We also need to be thinking about both engagement and sort of active representation within the work itself.
Yeah.
And we're following the set of approvals that will go through with the councils. We'll be looking at the detail for how we will do that, but we really are looking at a tailored program for youth engagement because we want to ensure that that voice is very loudly heard throughout this work.
And is there any opportunity to have actually members of the youth council sitting on some of the working groups or as part of the work stream decision making?
All of those options are absolutely on the table, and we will be taking this really seriously. Yeah.
And final question, just in regards to the funding. So we've got one vote, but we're paying a larger percentage of the funding. So we've got two votes. So just help us understand how the funding was, the current funding agreement was arrived at in terms of who contributes what.
Yeah,
And
Yes, it
is
is.
it safe to assume that this is unbudgeted expenditure?
This will need to go into the future LTP. It isn't on our books as it currently stands, and that will be part of the LTP discussion.
So can I just ask why this wasn't raised as part of the budget that we've just done? The annual
Because
plan?
at that stage we weren't at that point. We didn't know how far we would be able to get, so we're at the point where we have an agreement, and that's, you can't bring something if we don't know exactly where we're going to be at that point in time.
Right. Okay, so but the decision today is to recognise unbudgeted expenditure and then fund it through Canterbury Regional Council.
Yes, in terms of they are prepared to loan,
Right.
and with the ability for us to pay that back over 5 years.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
So can you just clarify why we're paying 37.5 5%?
Actually, it's less than that, as I said before. At the moment, the current split that GCP does its funding on is on this basis. I have asked for that to be looked at from the perspective from Christchurch's view, and that is something GCP, in the roundedness of how the allocations are done, are prepared to look at later on in the year. It's back to the principle, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mike? You're happy to move it? Okay. Sarah, you're happy to second? Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much.